So as Oliver heads to Amsterdam, our next moderator came from Amsterdam here, because as some of you are aware, we've got an event happening over there as well. This is our final conversation for the day. I've been promised it's rapid fire, and it's really good because it's some of the characters you already know and love from the ecosystem. So, really quickly, while people shuffle, our final session, and then we got, I don't know, drinks and dinner and party afterwards. If I could encourage you to come to the front, if you're here. I still got the box of chocolate at the front. You're welcome to it. I know you looked at it. It's for you. Have a box, have some chocolate. You don't want some chocolate? What's up with people not wanting chocolate? I thought this place was all about the chocolate. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around. I know it's been a very long day and a very wonderful day here. So much learning, so much growing together, and I'm really excited to see what happens from these new connections and old connections made here. I want to invite up the moderator for this panel. This poor fella came all the way from Amsterdam and immediately down to stage 2, and now here, didn't even get to get a drink in between. His voice is hoarse, but he's going to host this. So can we please give this up to the moderator of the panel, just Nikola, come on up. Yeah, Nikola.
Thank you so much, Ron.
How you feeling?
Great.
Yeah, how's your voice?
Oh, it's gone, but we'll be okay. I'll put everything that I still have on the line here.
Before we give the stage to you, MetaChange Capital,
Yep.
for those who do not know, your focus is on what verticals and where?
Early stage investments, blockchain, AI, ML, and security technology, Central and Eastern Europe.
Central and Eastern
Super
Europe.
straightforward.
And why Central and Eastern Europe?
Because we have built back in the days the infrastructure for this, and now it just makes sense to reap what we have seeded.
What's this final panel going to be about?
Well, the final panel is going to be about something a little bit more technical. It's retrust and verify in the Web3 space. So I'm actually very, very happy that my two panelists are people that know the technology, that have built and are building technology.
Correct.
So I also appreciate whoever is still here at this hour before the drinks.
Well, the
So
good
we
part
can
is
get to
our
it.
live stream community that are watching right now on
Oh,
that
nice.
camera and that camera, they've been around all day, and they're still sticking around because they could be watching in their pajamas, and they can be petting their dog right now.
I'm close to that, so you know.
Well, the stage is yours.
Thank you
Guys,
very
can we give a warm applause to the two panelists as they come up on stage?
You guys sit down here.
And
Yeah,
sit
just sit there, yeah. Okay. So we can do this a little bit more familiar.
okay.
Like,
Do you like this?
No, you can sit, Yanni, if you want,
Okay.
you can sit down here.
I misunderstood your hand gesture.
So, apparently this is the last panel of the day, which is, there's people vibing there. I love that, by the way. Oh, nice. And thank you very much for whoever is still left in this room right now at this hour. I'm saying this again because I know how hard it is to still be here. But I genuinely believe that what we have in this panel is quite interesting because I do have the pleasure and the honor to sit in my panel with two panelists that actually are building infrastructure and that have built it over the last years. So I want to kick this off as soon as possible. You guys very quickly introduce yourselves because Ryan already did it for me, and then we're going to jump right in. Just a super couple of sentences. Yanni, why don't you go first?
yeah, my name is Yanislav Malahov, and I'm the founder of Eternity Blockchain, crypto blockchain project founded here in 2016 in Liechtenstein, and in 2018 the public Eternity mainnet got launched, and we are still continuing to do some of the development and also building the ecosystem out of Liechtenstein for the world. It's a decentralized open source public crypto platform for smart contracts.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. So I'm David Dias, and I'm one of the authors and core builders of protocols that you might have used, like IPFS, Web peer-to-peer, or even Filecoin. I work at a company called Protocol Labs. We are a research, development, and deployment lab that focuses on the whole innovation pipeline, from ideas to research to papers to code to machines to then delivering superpowers to humans. We focus a lot about knowledge and preserving that knowledge and making sure that everyone has equal access to information. So we built like this decentralized storage network called Filecoin that today has 17 exabytes. For those of you who don't know, like you could put the whole YouTube, Spotify, Netflix inside and still have free space. And people are, using it every day, and like we are seeing 1 to 2 petabytes of data being onboarded into the network every day, which is quite exciting. Really happy to be here chatting with you all.
I love the part about the superpowers and everything around that, because building an ecosystem in itself and building technology, working together, not only implementing the technology, but also getting people excited for it. This is incredibly hard. It is not something which comes easy, and it comes at an incredibly high cost, unfortunately, because you not only need to be able to come up with an idea which is life-changing, you also need to be able to get everybody around you excited and to get people to actually use your technology. So, Yanni, I want to kick off with you because we've known each other for a long, long time. When we're looking right now, when you started Eternity in 2016, and then Ethereum popped up a little bit before that, and how it has developed now from a proof of work into a proof of stake mechanism, and we're seeing, I don't know, Solana popping up, we're seeing BNB, BSC, BCH, whatever you can think of right now, and you being actually one of the few people that I do value as a visionary, how do you see the interaction which we're seeing right now in the Web3 space? Does it make sense what we're seeing, or is this all fluff pretty much? Like, what's the importance of the layer ones that you are also building with Eternity compared to all the other stuff which is just riding the wave?
Generally, we can see lots of things, and I can't speak for all of them. Of course, lots of things make sense, but lots of things don't make sense. And generally, the things which make sense have not really changed so much since the beginning of kind of like blockchain or decentralized public open source ledger technology. It's the kind of like the core ideals. It's very similar in the sense that we want to have as many transactions as possible for the public, for the people on the internet to do transactions for whatever reason, for whatever use case. And there are kind of like different ways how to do it, like different technological approaches. And some of them are more centralized or decentralized, and therefore have maybe more transactions or less transactions. But when we look at, for example, how, for example, with Solana, how it's just being shut down, or Binance Smart Chain, how it's being like shut down whenever there's a bug, it goes so quickly. It doesn't look very centralized. They have lots of transactions, but they're definitely sacrificing on the decentralization or not being decentralized at all. You can argue here also that decentralization has multiple dimensions itself. And yeah, Bitcoin, for example, being the first one having a like super big focus on this decentralization and security, not changing almost anything of the source code of the software for so much time, except of maybe a few lines. And yeah, of course, we need more innovation in the space. It can't be just Bitcoin. There need to be more innovative, more experimental approaches to decentralized public open source smart contract technology or ledgers and blockchains. So yeah, proof of stake is one kind of trend which we have seen, especially since Ethereum launched. Proof of stake was always in discussion, and proof of stake or Ethereum moved recently to proof of stake, and there's almost no other smart contract platform out there except of Eternity, which is still proof of work. And
True, absolutely. That is absolutely true. And that was also part of the question, but I'm going to come back to that in one second. On the other side, I mean, David, when we're looking at EVM in general, like when you're looking at infrastructures, the majority of them have an EVM so that they can use Solidity and implement it into the Web3 layer 1, obviously. How important do you think like it is it to have an EVM right now? How do you guys actually utilize that? And more importantly, what do you think about layer 1s that don't have an EVM?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question, and I'll try to take like the multiple parts, right? So
just 1 second, EVM theory.
It's the thing that enables networks like Ethereum to be multifunctional rather than single purpose. And so, like, ultimately the way that we see the different networks, the different L1s or even the different L2s is because, like, it's different ecosystems representing a different set of values. And like ultimately communities really congregate around the values that they align the best with. And like one of the things that we do at Protocol Labs is really try to understand like what are the values that we want to promote, that we want to push for, the ones that we want to bring to the world. And like we also look at history and understand that like there have been like multiple revolutions of technology that because some decisions were made at the time for convenience, ultimately compromised the whole set of values that the technology was trying to bring to the world. One of the big things, and like somewhat the theme of this conference, is this transition from Web 2 to Web 3, right? So we talk about going from centralized to decentralized. And if you think about it, and if you go even back to Web 1 was decentralized. But because certain technological decisions were made, such as having centralized domain systems, name systems, like the domain name system, DNS, or removing the ability for machines to connect from a home to a home or a home to a local service provider, and only allowing them to connect from a home to like a centralized provider, those decisions ultimately forced the web to become more and more centralized and to consolidate power in some specific players. So it is really hard if you don't bet on the right values at the core infrastructure that you are building on top. It's really hard to claim those back, right? And so when we look into what is happening in crypto and like the multiple types of chains that exist out there, ultimately it's important for whatever the project is trying to achieve or whatever the application that what it is trying to achieve, to understand the values of the network that they are building on top. And if there is versatility, that could be one thing. If there is scalability, that could be another network. If there is performance or cheap gas fees, that could be another network. If it's upgradability or even governance, it's another thing, right? And so this plurality really takes us a long way.
Wait. When you talk about values, to me this sounds more like objects that are part of the blockchain in itself. You know, value for me is something else when I think about it. So I think we need to make a differentiation here. But aren't those all questionable at the end of the day? Because when you look at an infrastructure in itself, the most important thing that we're seeing right now is how hyped is it really? Because nobody looks that much at the technological aspect. Nobody looks at the decentralization aspect in itself. When we look at, if we can call it mass usage, when we keep in mind how many people are utilizing different networks, but if you look at BAC or BNB Smart Chain, that is an absolute copy of another blockchain. If you look at Polygon is a layer 2 that's built on Ethereum at the end of the day. You know, they changed the consensus mechanism, but in itself, it is the same thing. So real technology-heavy infrastructures, in my opinion, have been a little bit left out because people have focused more on the technological aspects, and the recognition of that technology has not been there. It's like, what is most hyped? Where do you have the craziest stories? Who have the coolest merch, you know? Who's got the coolest NFTs and whatever kind of DeFi wannabe type of stuff. But when you look at the technological aspect, the implementation and the actual technological aspect of this, people don't focus too much on that. They focus on the top highest layer, in my opinion. And when you talk about values, to me it sounds like this is correlating with what we have actually in the space. Because I understand, I mean, like, we've built infrastructure, so I know what a value is and I know what it means to program something into the first layer. But I see that the majority out there don't care about this.
My observation on that is like, it really depends on the point of view that you take. If you go by trading volume, right, like maybe you are looking at a specific set of user that is very interested on the economic gain that they can get out of these networks, and so their interest, if it's decentralized, or if it puts users first, or if it's censorship resistant, or if it's privacy preserving, it's less important for them. If you look at the number of apps built on top of the network, you might be looking at users, like the builders, that are more interested in resiliency or performance or the ability to deliver the feature set that they want to deliver to their users. And so I think there's like definitely, I observe a lot of different groups that value different things in terms of what they want to provide and what they want to create. And yes, like this ultimately can create different perceptions depending on what you're looking at. But ultimately, like networks are trying to distinguish themselves, prove themselves that they are specifically valuable for a specific or the largest group of set of use cases, but still a specific set within the largest scope of things.
I mean, that Bitcoin is decentralized, there's a fundamentally reason. Like, there have been other, let's say, currencies launched in the past, and they all got shut down, and they were all working until they got shut down. So I guess you can compromise on decentralization until you don't get problems with whichever government is currently looking to make problems. Like, there have been always governments in this world which are continuously making problems. Like, if we look now from our perspective into what's happening in Eastern Europe, for example. So decentralization is fundamentally an important value, I would say. And yes, lots of projects compromise on this, but if it gets really tough one day, it's hard to get around decentralization. So essentially, all those projects will go to zero, which are not decentralized, which are
fair.
Yeah.
Fair. But I'll challenge that because I'll play the devil's advocate. My opinion is that the majority of projects don't care about decentralization. What they care about is where to get the first grant from. It doesn't matter if it's 1, 2, 3, or 5 different platforms. We're not talking, by the way, we're not talking like deep tech technology. We're talking basic layer 2 structures. Where are they going to get the first grant from? Who are they going to be able to link up to and announce a couple of partnerships? Are they going to be able to get a picture with a certain somebody who runs one of the largest exchanges in the world and use that in a certain way? And then figure out how to raise their own. But is the infrastructure in itself important? Right now, for the majority of people, I don't think so. Again, like for me to quote, I'm trying to understand how you guys can convince me and everybody else here that it's not the case. That it's not only right now, where's my biggest incentive, so I'm going to go there, rather than what actually makes most sense for my product.
But nobody wants to build on infrastructure which just got shut down from one day to the other because of a regulator. Nobody wants to do this, right? So it's quite important what you're picking as a startup, I would think.
You would think so, but even with the recent cases that we just mentioned with Solana, you know, there's a huge app ecosystem on Solana, and what I'm seeing more and more is that a project comes up and they go multi-chain from the start, not even utilizing the actual main points which identify a blockchain. They're like, yeah, it works.
Is Solana really crypto? Is really is Web 3.0 Solana? Is this? How can we say whether it is? Meaning, is it maybe too centralized? Maybe it should not be even in this ranking. Maybe Ripple as well. Maybe Ripple is also not really a blockchain.
I think
who decides what is a blockchain or what belongs to these Web 3.0 projects?
That exactly, and that brings me to one of my next questions, which is, this is one huge pain point. What is actually a web, how do you define a layer 1? How do you define a blockchain? We had a discussion about this, but what are a couple of other pain points that you guys are seeing right now in this Web3 environment, which are just right in front of everybody, but the majority of people just dismiss them as if they're not there?
There are many, and just following the line of conversation here, one way to see and to approach this is ultimately to empower the user as much as possible so that they can make the best informed decision of which chain to use for each specific use case or which product or which app. And this is something that we really believe and stand on, where ultimately if they can, and it becomes this huge educational problem, which is one of the challenges on Web3, is exactly...
Huge pain point.
Exactly, and so users today do not have the best tools or the best training or the best learnings. The stories still don't exist because this technology is so nascent for them to actually value something more than another thing and to make a better informed decision. A lot of it is very driven by emotion, like the FOMO, right? Just FOMOing into projects, right? I think it's something that you were describing, just people jumping in without really thinking about if the underlying technology. But what we can expect as the ecosystem matures and as cycles come through is that there is going to be a more collective, informed collective that will start seeing some trends of what certain groups prefer in one direction or the other. And so empowering the user is incredibly important, making sure that they understand that the compromises that they are taking when they pick A or B, right? Because there is always like a trade-off. There is no one-size-fits-all that like pleases everyone. Related and like just like general Web3 problems as a whole is ultimately the number of people that can even like build this technology, right? Like one of the things that we see at Protocol Labs, and because we get to work with a lot of different companies, either within our network but also like in sibling ecosystems, is that like everyone wants their like Solidity or just like generic smart contract engineer. Everyone wants a person that can build an app that is resilient to a DNS takedown. Everyone wants to be able to build something that can scale for all their users. Everyone wants to even, like sometimes it's not even technological, like people, one of the big challenges that we find, that our founders tell us, is even how to collaborate in an international way, in a borderless way, that is compliant with local jurisdictions, right? Like we see a lot of founders starting in one country, like founder in India hires 3 people, 1 in Thailand, 1 in Portugal, 1 in Spain. Like, does that mean that the startup now needs to be multinational company from day zero?
Do they all need C-level titles?
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Well, that makes that means like that founders now are distracted with figuring out like local jurisdictions regulations, making sure that they're compliant with everything, having to have a lot of conversations with a lot of lawyers to just like create the structures in order to be able to compensate people fairly for, or not even fairly, just compensate people in the place where they live in the world. So there is a lot of infrastructure, not only in the technology, but even like how people collaborate, that needs to be developed to accelerate this momentum. The number of developers in Web3 is considerably small compared to the ones
Really
in
small.
Web2.
I agree. But Yanni, what do you think? Like, what are for you pain points right now?
I mean, Web3 is generally like a
Huge pain point.
like a buzzword where different people understand different things, but if we understand that Web3 is essentially the evolution from Web 1 to over Web 2 to Web 3, where the users have now full control over their finances and over their identity, where it's not anymore dependent on big corporations such as Facebook or Google, where it's really a decentralized web where the users are really also owners of the products or services they're using essentially. If this becomes possible, and if this is our common understanding of Web3, I think it's extremely powerful. But the adoption so far is really minimal in the sense that probably the largest Web3 project is Bitcoin. Although most of the people would not even think that Bitcoin is a Web3 project, some projects in the crypto space have been trying to hijack the word or the term Web3 and claiming that what they're doing is Web3 and what other projects are doing is maybe not so Web3. So yeah, I think we should be talking about the decentralized crypto web where the individuals really become more powerful and going away from this massive centralized internet. And I hope this is going to happen in the sense that again, I have not really seen any good Web3 application yet, which is really going viral. Lots of so-called Web3 projects are still using username and password as a login. I mean, wallet login is becoming now really a thing as well, but it's somehow moving more slowly than expected. But as also people say, it's people underestimate what can be, overestimate what can be done in 1 year, but underestimate what can be done in 10 years. And the space is really growing, maturing, and it's exciting to see this. That is, right now we're not anymore in such a hype phase. It's rather like a beer market, so it's more solid stuff now. It's less fluff, which is a problem with Web3.
I love the part where you mentioned when we talk about buzzwords in Web3, because one of the biggest issues that I've had since I have been in blockchain, by the way, thanks to you, was that when do you really need a blockchain? Can you just plaster it on everything? Gaming, JPEGs, whatever it is? Or is there actually a use case where, like you just mentioned, which you haven't seen yet, where it actually makes sense? And I've struggled over the years with a lot of projects to not say, you don't need a blockchain at all. Like, this is absolutely normal application. It makes absolutely no sense because you clearly have not understood what a blockchain really does. But where it does make sense, in my opinion, it is still, there are barriers of entry for users because either, like what you mentioned, David, which is there's not enough knowledge and education part there, or that, which leads also again to complexity of utilization of an application. And I think here I would like to have you say a couple of words about IPFS and Filecoin because the complexity of it is, you know, it's quite big. The understanding of it also not easy, but the utilization of it again, not really magic. So it is usable at the end of the day. And from there on, Yanni, maybe you can say what you have seen where it does make sense and where you see that people can use something really which is being used except of JPEGs.
Yeah. I guess like one thing that you probably have noticed, I'm a very optimist person. And so
you're in blockchain, for Christ's sake. You must be optimistic.
So I really like to look at the great examples and like the super creative things that are happening thanks to the technology and thanks to what blockchain and distributed ledger and smart contracts enable, right? And so I think Zuko said this, like technology or it doesn't happen all at once, it happens in revolutions. And so right now what we are seeing, thanks to all of these distributed ledgers and ultimately all of these new instruments, financial instruments, NFTs, not NFTs, distributed organizations, DAOs and so on, is a huge global education system for people to learn what it means to create a financial instrument, to govern, to manage resources, to coordinate together and so on. And so there's a lot of interesting use cases that were not possible before because of the huge friction of like starting one of these systems, but now thanks to the technology, we can just like simply open a website, code a few rules, and suddenly we have an organization that can govern itself.
When you talk about a lot of use cases, give me two. Like two which actually make sense. And then Yanni, the same thing, and I want to ask you guys one more question so we can finish up. Two.
You asked me about IPFS multiple times and I haven't answered. So like IPFS ultimately is a content address file system. Okay. What it enables you is to access data independently of the location of the data, right? So the simplest analogy is if you want to tell someone to read a book, you might tell them to go to a library in New York and like go to the shelf, I know 3, row 4, and like get that book. And that's exactly how the web works. Like you tell them the location and they have to travel the network to get that book. With IPFS, you just say the code of the book or the title of the book, and they will realize maybe they already have it or they have a neighbor that has it, and so they don't have to travel the world. What this creates is like this super powerful mechanism because the information is retrieved in a way faster way. Like if the location of the information is on your neighbor's computer, you don't have to travel around the world to pull it.
Directly access it.
So it also saves a lot of cost, right? Because now, rather than paying the bandwidth fees, which is something expensive, like you have companies like Netflix that literally ship hard drives to ISPs so that like they reduce the costs to send the video to their clients, they can just pay someone that is in the neighborhood that is very interested to serve that data directly. And this is where you also asked me about Filecoin. This is where Filecoin comes along, right? Like it's a programmable storage network, right? Like you can define your own rule to decide how your data gets stored worldwide. You can decide how many replicas, you can decide like the location, you can decide, like you can work with local entrepreneurs to store the data for you, and like you have access to this huge market. This was not possible before. Like you could do it maybe in an Airbnb like model where you have this gatekeeper that like everyone has to register to, but like it will never reach the scale which we're seeing right now, where everyone can just in a permissionless way contribute with resources to the network.
I love how the project that you're working on is actually also your example that makes sense. Yanni, seriously, in your opinion, tell me what are 2 use cases where you think that actually do make sense, which we finally want to see, should see very soon?
For smart contracts and blockchains in general,
Yeah.
I mean, everything which is worth being tracked by blockchains should probably be tracked by blockchains in the future. For example, all the public tax money, for example.
Okay, that's a good
like
one.
in many countries around Europe, people are paying, let's say, 1/3 or half of their income to a completely intransparent
don't know where it's
systems, and you don't know where it's going, and it's public money. Why is this not being tracked? Or, for example, research results, or generally everything which is being funded by this public money should be probably tracked and time-stamped by blockchains, and it's programmable money or programmable digital items, you could say. It could be digital identity. There are so many use cases. It's really just the start of what we're seeing, and it's kind of like finding use cases for databases. Yes, databases are nowadays essentially in every computer, every phone. There are many different databases, and also blockchains. Probably they're going to be many different blockchains for depending like which precise use case they have been made for or are being applied with or for.
But it's good that each one of the examples that you guys mentioned actually do make sense for the blockchain. So I'm pretty thankful that you guys shared your opinion with me. Appreciate it. Thank you for everybody that remained with us listening. And we're done. Have a good evening in this case for me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, it's fun.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, man.
Pleasure.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Dan, we should
Appreciate
get a
having
picture
you.
with you, but I haven't had a picture with you in like pre-COVID.
Come on.
Let's
get a photo.
Are we taking a
All
selfie
of
with
us?
the audience?
Yeah, get in here. Let's
Should
do
we take it
that.
with the audience?
Oh, yeah, actually, let's do that. Get in here.
All right,
Yeah,
smile,
perfect.
everybody. I guess you're in this
Now
impromptu
you're gonna do
selfie.
stage diving.
Can't do that anymore. There we go, and there, and we're good to go.
Yeah.
Oh, you're doing one with us.
Sorry,
there
guys.
we
Like, all you could see was our backs. Okay. Oh.
Let's do one more. Perfect.
Lovely.
Thank
Make
you.
it an
Okay.
NFT.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.